Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. This week on the show, I'm joined by Jake Hofer, the host of our brand new, soon to launch podcast mini-series, the Back 40 podcast. And today, we are going to be previewing that show and answering some of the most important, pressing questions that you and I are likely to face in the coming months as we take on the challenge of hunting and managing our own back 40s. All right, welcome back to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by First Light and their Camo for Conservation initiative. Today in the show, I am joined by Jake Hofer, and as you just heard, he is joining us here on Wired to Hunt with a brand new podcast mini-series. And so today on the show, when Jake joins me, we're going to be talking about what this new show is. We're calling it the Back 40 podcast. We're going to preview what you can expect in the coming weeks on this new show. And then we're also going to preview the actual content of that show, as Jake is going to have to run through some of the very same questions that our future podcast guests will as well. Now, real quick, if you're not familiar with Jake, what I want you to know is this. He's one of the best podcast hosts out there. He has hosted in the past the Exodus Trail Camera Radio podcast. Now he has his own Whitetail podcast show. He was a co-owner for Exodus Trail Cameras. He also hosts the Land podcast and now also owns the Whitetail Master Academy, I believe it's called. Sorry, Jake. And just a tremendous thinker within the whitetail space, a great question asker, he's really good at getting folks to explain exactly what it is that we as hunters need when we're trying to learn from these folks. And so because of that, when I found out that Jake might be available for some collaborations, I jumped really quickly to try to bring him on board here to Wired to Hunt. So there's going to be a lot more of Jake to come this fall. I'm excited about some other projects we've got going on. But today, like I said, we're going to hear from Jake on this new show. We're going to learn about what the new show is going to be all about. And then we're going to be answering some of the most pressing questions that you are likely to have if you hunt, any kind of private land. This show is mostly private land focused. We're going to be talking about some management questions. We're going to be talking about some hunting questions when you kind of have some control over the property. But there is some stuff that's relevant regardless. But again, we're really looking at this idea of what are the major questions that you or I have when it comes to tackling challenges on our own back 40, whether that's 40 acres or 4 acres or 400 acres, whatever it is. Those are the kinds of things we're trying to tackle with this show. And I will let Jake explain it here in a second. I don't think we need me rambling on any further, but stay tuned for some great information today for habitat-related ideas, management-related ideas, hunting small properties, and much, much more. And you're going to hear about the Back 40 podcast, which I think you guys are going to really enjoy once you find out the wide breadth of experts that we have a part of this and the different types of topics we'll be covering as well. So without any further ado, let's get to it with Jake Hofer. All right, joining me back on the show is Jake Hofer. Welcome back, Jake.
Hey, it's good to be back. A lot to talk about here.
Yeah, you're back in a different capacity today.
Yeah.
This is a different kind of appearance on the Wired Hunt podcast because you are appearing today as a guest on the podcast. You will be appearing next week as a host of a Wired Hunt network podcast. So congratulations on the new show coming out.
Yeah, I'm super excited. We had brainstormed of what could we do that would be really fun and exciting, and I feel like we came up with a format and style that was a lot of work, to tell you the truth. When you come up with an idea and you say this is what we'll do, way more work than some of the other ways to produce a podcast. So I hope people appreciate this format because it's a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you are partway through the recording process so far. How would you say it is going to this point?
It's going really good. So we've done 6 of 8, and it's been really fun because I have thankfully had the opportunity to interview all these people before. So these are people that I'm already familiar with, and I know how some of them think already. And so I had some preconceived notions of how they would answer some of these questions, and I have been shocked on a handful of them. And it's all rooted around the whitetail questions and dilemmas everyone has, no matter how many years you've been doing it, or if you're brand new, or whatever the case may be. These are issues that we all face, and these guys find success, a lot, and they also have built careers around land, and they have cumulatively. I would be scared to know how much whitetail habitat they have impacted in a positive way. I would say it would be tens of, if not 50,000, tens of thousands of acres, or 50 thousands of acres would be my guess. So it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess before we get into all of that, because I want to hear a little bit about what the process has been like. I want to discuss some of the thought that went behind both, how we came up with this idea and format together, but then also how you came up with the questions and what that's been like in the field a little bit. And then to preview for folks, I'm going to ask your questions to you to get your take on these things before we get to the real show next week. But really quick for people that are, jumping in here before the show is actually out there to the world, what is the format for this new show going to be? What's each episode going to be comprised of? Give me the pitch.
Yeah. So basically, it's one question and 8 answers. And so what that means is we scheduled these questions to be timely based off of the excitement and anticipation of the season and some of the pitfalls, some of the dilemmas that we all face. And so I wanted to find 8 experts with a ton of experience that have faced a lot of different issues, a lot of different problems. I'm sure questions that they've been asked a million times over the years, and really get folks from Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, a big part of the whitetail population. And that way there's variety in some of the answers where they're not all from Iowa, they're not all from Illinois, and people can listen to different ideas from different areas. And that's how we came up with it, because these are burning questions we all have where you just have, I don't think anxiety is the right way to say it, but this excitement and uncertainty, because you want the season to go well. You've been waiting all year. Like, you want this season to be your best. Everyone wants their next season to be their best, and this is hopefully going to help.
Yeah. Well, I think what makes, or I guess the way that we kind of came to this, you and I, as we were talking about this, is that originally the idea was, okay, we want a podcast series that's primarily focused on folks working their own ground, some private land, maybe some management, maybe just by permission. But, Tony does a great job with some of our public land focused stuff. But we wanted to have something that was a little bit more focused on the guy or girl who's, working on their own back 40 or their back 400 or their back 4, whatever it is. And when we kind of struck on this idea of like, oh, the back 40, kind of like the show, the television YouTube show that I did a few years ago. And when I started that project, the back 40, you walk out there on your property when you kick off this thing, when you buy it or when you lease it or when you get access, whatever it is, and you find yourself sometimes daunted, or maybe you like go into it with tons of excitement and think you know it all. And then as soon as you get started, then you're like, oh, wow, what about this? Or what about this? Or what about this? And you start getting question after question after question that starts stacking up. And when you reach out to a friend or you look online for podcasts or YouTube videos, like, what do I do about this thing? What do I do if my food plot sucks? Whatever it is, you're going to get a million different answers, right? Mm-hmm. And that is also a thing that I know you've seen as a podcast host, right? Over my 12 or 13, whatever, however many years it's been that I've been doing the Wired to Hunt podcast. One thing that has stood out time and time again is that there's no one single way to do this, anything, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny though. Almost every diehard deer hunter you talk to is very confident that their approach is the right way. They're always like, this is the way to do it. But then I listen to 10 different guys and they all say different things. Mm-hmm. And what I think is unique about this format and what I think will be really useful here is that we are acknowledging the fact that there are many different ideas, many different ways to do this stuff. And what you do in each one of these episodes is that we tackle one topic, one question. You present these 8 different perspectives. They might be wildly different. They might have a lot in common. And then what I love is that, your plan is to do a little bit of synthesizing yourself and kind of saying like, here's how I'm thinking this through, or here's how I'm talking, or here's how I'm going to deal with this myself, or here's what I think about X and Y. And maybe even, I don't know how you're going to tackle this, but maybe there'll even be some parts or in some questions where you're like, I don't know how to make sense of these 4 totally disparate, different ideas here. And I think that's kind of cool that we're going to kind of work through that together in each one of these episodes as we learn from all these different people with different sets of experience from different parts of the country. And I think we're all going to be able to learn a lot because of that. So I love the way this is coming together. I love the format. I think there's, right now we're doing an 8-episode mini series run. I'm hopeful that we're able to do more of these in the future because there's many, many, many more burning questions that we should cover in the future.
Mhm.
So yeah, who all do you have included in this
Yeah.
run of the series?
So when I was putting this list together, like I said, I've been able to interview uh, just about everyone that I would love to have interviewed with, and I've got to know a lot of these guys. And so um, I recorded with Steve Hansen from Iowa. He has a really fun history. I always joke that I think he's helped more people kill their best deer than just about anyone. He was in the outfitting business, and he's just helped a lot of people. He works on a ton of farms. He's a licensed agent, and has worked on a ton of habitat projects, a ton. And so I brought in Steve Hansen on this. Another one is Don Higgins. I think he should and will go down as one of the most impactful whitetail land managers of our generation. I think his track record is really interesting, and also I think his approach is different in a lot of ways too, with where he's at regionally, and some of the strategies I think are a little bit unique too. So I wanted to get his perspective. Another one's Bobby Kendall. He's from New York originally. He does a lot of like very massive overhauls on projects. He's on many farms and sees many different things. But he seems to have a bag of tricks that he likes to stick to. So I wanted to bring in his perspective of working on a lot of farms all at once. The next person is Jeff Sturgis. I've known Jeff for a super long time, have a lot of respect for him. And he's helped a lot of people identify issues with their farm, some different strategies and different philosophies. Next is Skip Sly. I've got to know Skip over the years, and I think he has a ton of experience of looking at habitat and whitetail hunting through a lot of different lenses, from starting with a small farm to managing a much larger farm today. And what are the problems and challenges with that? Another one's Bill Winke. Everyone knows who Bill is. That was a very fun conversation. And then we had Thomas Milsna, who I have a lot of respect for. He's from Wisconsin. I think he set the county record twice for archery. This is a
Yeah.
really, really great deer hunter and a very thoughtful individual when it comes to the landscape, and very analytical when it comes to deer hunting. And
Yeah.
so I just wrapped up the conversation with him, and that was excellent. And then I'm going to be asking you a bunch of questions too, with back 40 experience, and also a lot of knowledge in the brain, and getting your hands dirty on different projects. So that's the roundabout list, and kind of the elevator pitch of why I picked who I did. And I don't think I could have came up with a better list.
It's such a good list. It's people that uh, I have had previous conversations with as well, and always walk away from those learning something new, feeling inspired. And I love the idea of getting them all together. And we're going to get some really interesting angles on all these different things. And I think if you have 4 acres or 40 acres or 400 or 75 or whatever, or if you've knocked on the door and got permission on a few kinds of places, I think there's going to be a lot here to put into action in the future. So before we get into these questions, which I'm going to run by you, force you to run your own gauntlet,
Oh boy.
just in case people have not heard you on this show in the past, or if they haven't heard your own podcasts, I do want to just peel back the onion a little bit and just get a quick sense of why this set of topics, why a podcast about land management and hunting your own ground and improving your own ground. Why does that like get you up in the morning? Why is this something that you have ended up building your whole life around? You could have done a lot of things, Jake. You're a smart dude.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? What's so special about this thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a pretty heavily whitetail household. We had a small deer farm when I was growing up, so you really, I took for granted of growing up in that type of environment where I got to watch bucks grow velvet every single year. I got to see when they would drop their antlers. I was blessed enough to have some really great farms that I could just run around all over as a kid, and so I just I've just always really enjoyed whitetails. I've always enjoyed learning. I feel that there's so much that you can learn from other people, and there's so many ways to find success, and that's always motivated me to learn from others. Um, and then as far as the another interesting thing, so my dad used to carve antlers out of wood. I have those big sheds behind me were carved out of wood, and there's a funny story behind that.
Wow.
But like growing up and having the Illinois roadkill, getting Frankenstein in the basement out of wood is such a weird thing. And then when I look back, I was like, that is so strange, but it definitely formed me in a lot of ways of who I am today. And I had the opportunity to record with some of these folks a lot over the years and get to know them and become friends. And so it's just been a culmination of a lot of great things. And I dreamed of owning a piece of ground myself ever since I was a kid. And I bought that farm. It's like, so before that, I was so interested in, okay, how do you hunt permission? How are you effective on small parcels? And then I bought a back 40 acres. And exactly like you said, all these new questions I didn't know really existed or I didn't care enough about hit me like a ton of bricks. And it's like, I have so much to learn so fast so I can start making a positive impact.
Yeah. You have talked to most of the guests so far for this series. Would you say that there is more agreement on these topics or more disagreement than you expected?
There's been a lot more agreement than I would have anticipated. I would say a general consensus would be about 80% agreement so far, like per question. Everyone had a little bit of a new twist. And the best part of this format was they all shared their own nuanced take about each one of them. And so everyone has a different way, to your point, of finding success. And almost all of them at some point gave a nuance of their approach and philosophy behind it. And you're like, okay, yeah, that is the task. And this is how you go about it in your unique way. And so I felt energized at the end of each of those questions with, I need to remember that this year. I've recorded with a bunch of these people and I know that, but it's like, oh yeah, I didn't really, I knew that, but I didn't really consider that, or I forgot it, or it didn't hit me like that before. So I would say overall, a general consensus is there's been a lot of agreement overall.
All right. Very interesting. Okay. So what I want to do is walk through each one of the questions that you put together for this series. And as a reminder for folks, each one of these questions will be an entire episode coming up. So I'd love to get a little bit of background on these questions. So why you think this is an important question, why you chose this for an episode. And then I'd love to get your actual take, your personal take on this stuff. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. And I am working off of kind of your rough list that you sent me. So if I butcher the question somehow, feel free to correct me.
Okay.
But I think I've got the list right here. So it is the order you sent me is the order the episodes will be in. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So the first episode that folks will see is going to be tackling a question somewhere along the lines of, I haven't put my trail cameras out for my summer or fall scouting yet. So where do I start?
Yeah. You want to know the reason why I came up with that question to start off here?
Yeah. Why is that the first episode? Why is that the question that people will be getting an answer to at the end of July this year?
Yeah. People are busy in the summer. And you ask anyone that's a diehard whitetail hunter, how are things going? Oh, I'm behind. Every one of them, I'm behind. No one ever says, I'm right on track and everything's going great. Never hear that one. And so that's, if folks that haven't put out their cameras, I wanted them to know, are they truly behind the eight ball? And then number two, maybe there's some ways you're running your cameras on your farms now that you should do different this year. And so that's the root of the question of, you haven't put them out yet. So where do I start? And so that gets information out of these guests on, this is exactly how they're going about putting their cameras. Are they hanging them super deep in bedding? Are they tearing through the whole farm and taking notes again? Are they, going around the fringes? Are they trying to key in on an early season opportunity? Are they trying to monitor a rut funnel throughout the rest of the summer? And so that was the root of the question, because just about everyone uses cameras, and a lot of people rely on the information that is provided. And by not having cameras out yet, they probably have some FOMO. And so this is either to calm them or get them fired up. So we'll have to see what the answers are.
Now, if someone were to listen to that episode in like on October 1st,
Mhm.
or God forbid November 1st, and they're thinking, I don't have my cameras out yet. Are they going to still be able to get something from these answers? Is there going to
Yeah.
be something that can be applied no matter what time of year you end up being in that position?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. There'll be certainly some key pieces of information, whether you listen to that to the end of July or mid August or September or October. And gosh, hopefully not November. But you're really busy if that's the case. But yeah, it kind of breaks down a lot of their thought processes of where they're putting them and why and what's the information they're trying to gather. Which seems simple, but it's a little more complicated when you're let free on the farm to try to go get that information.
Oh, and you're right. It's like a simple concept, simple question. But again, what I think is going to make this really, really interesting is hearing from these 8 different people all about how they're thinking through their camera placement and what goals they're going to have and what they're going to do with it. I'm very excited for that. So, what about for you? Um, where would you suggest? Where would you start if you were in this situation right now? What would you suggest to someone if they're jumping into kind of late summer? All right, got to get these cameras out. What can I achieve? What can I do?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, I'm just like everyone else. I'm a little behind right now, so I'm going to be deploying cameras on some places I want to. And I think for me, the most important thing is if you had the ability to run cameras on that farm the year before, and maybe you had some summer intel, or maybe there's some areas where there's good inventory spots of the farm. Maybe it's alfalfa, maybe it's edge of a cornfield that meets another field. Places you necessarily might not hunt, but you want to get proof of life. You want to know if the deer you're dreaming about is still alive. And so a lot of those locations is based off of previous year's experience. Maybe throw out a few floater cameras in an area that has some sort of green food source for the summer period, understanding that they're likely going to shift unless you have a big farm. But if you're hunting, a 40-acre piece, a 60-acre piece, you're hopefully going to get more bucks throughout the fall. And this question leads into another question later on where people, start to potentially panic based off of they put the cameras out. So that's where I'm going to start. And then even in some more sensitive areas, I am trying to be really organized when I go in. Like if I get a free Saturday, I'm going to try to knock out absolutely everything for that Saturday. I'm going to put a camera up with a solar panel. I'm going to make sure I'm using either lithium batteries or a lithium rechargeable pack where I know the spot's going to be good for the rut. I'm going to go in there and let it just start doing its thing. And hopefully I get a picture or two of the deer that will be utilizing that area in the rut. So that's my personal strategy. I've been better at getting pictures of deer than killing them. So that model does work to some degree.
Hey, that's the case for most people.
Yeah, that's right.
By the way,
That's why we brought in 8 experts. So
yeah. So, what about if you were asked this question on October 1st? Let's say someone just got, or let's say you just get access to a new property
Mhm.
October 1st. The season's starting today, but now you've got this brand new 100 acres you can hunt. How does your answer change if that's the case?
I'm going to be excited to start because there's nothing more fun than trying to figure out what's out there. So my biggest thing would be I live in farm country. I live in Illinois. So a lot of these parcels maybe have a parcel like that I'm just picturing is, I don't know, 20 or 30% timber and the rest of it's open fields. And so depending on the type of crop, I'm probably just going to walk all the edges of all the fields, try to figure out where there's different, maybe there's a creek system there and you can get an idea where there might be some funneling going on. The other thing would be looking for scrapes on the edge of these fields to put up a camera for inventory. I would bring a weed whacker and some handsaw and a backpack full of cameras, and I'm going to do a big loop. And then I'm going to look at the map online and see if there's any terrain features that are going to be really exciting to inventory, and try to be as efficient as possible. What has been interesting throughout these conversations is there's some people that would say they would go in and cover every inch of it while they're already in their October 1. And some of them would just go on the fringes and just like, hey, I just want to know they're there and I'm going to put a game plan together kind of on the fly. And I probably fall on more of the side of I'm going to go try to cover as much as possible to learn as much. And the other thing too is a lot of these guys, most of them are hunting a specific buck too. And then there's some that are hunting, maybe 3 or 4 mature bucks. And I would be in the category of hunting, a mature buck, not a single deer. And so if I bump one off, hopefully there's still, two other ones that I have an opportunity at.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. The best spot on my farm has bad access. How do I hunt it this year? So, background on the question, and then what would you do?
The amount of times I've heard people say, "Oh, there's a sweet spot. It's so cool. I found it when I was shed hunting. I found it." I remember from the year before, I walked in there scouting in November and it just reeked of buck, and it was just a big buck oasis. And then they usually follow up with, "I can't get back there. I don't think I can get back there. I don't know if I should get back there." And that's almost everyone I talk to has said something to that degree. And so that was the root of the question of, okay, these guys are very successful. Do they go in to hunt that area? Do they go in to hunt the spot where you have to walk through 90% of the farm and scare 3 different doe family groups for the Hail Mary shot to hunt whatever feature that makes that spot so special? And the answers may surprise folks. They may not. But that was the root of the question, because I guarantee there's been a spot that that you could think of right now. Like, I wish I could hunt that, and maybe you
Oh, yeah.
did hunt it, or maybe you didn't hunt it. And so
Yep, for sure.
that's the challenge. That's a whitetail dilemma every hunter has faced. Every single one of them.
Yes. I know what Don Higgins answered. Tell you that.
Yep.
Okay. So, what's your take?
My take, and it's the worst answer in the world of podcasts, it depends, but I'll give an example. There was last year where I shot my archery buck. The access was not very good, but I hunted it one time and I shot a buck. So in that scenario, it worked. There's been times where I've tried that and it feels more like I'm pounding my head against the wall of, this spot is so good, why is it not working? And I forget about the deer I scared on the way in and the way out. I forget about the deer that I heard snorting because the wind wasn't great, because maybe it is an awesome spot, but there's not a good place to blow my scent. And so going into this season, a slightly more wise, I would be on the side of, how can I still hunt that movement or hunt that feature, but maybe it's 150 yards away versus the spot. I just got off the phone with a friend, and he's new farm. It was just perfect. And I brought this up that I'm launching the series, and he's like, "Man, that one spot, down at the bottom, where you got to walk through everything. Like, man, that spot looks awesome. I just don't know how to hunt it." And I was like, "Well, you have to listen to a new episode of a new show that's coming out soon."
Stay tuned.
That's right. So it's a question that we all battle.
Yeah. And you're right. There's no one single answer to it. In so much of hunting, so much of a lot of these decisions and these questions, like even back to like the trail camera question you brought up, do you go in on October 1st and cover it all so you learn everything at once? Or do you stay in the fringes and be careful? It all comes down like risk and reward.
Yep.
You're balancing what's the possible positive outcome of this pressure I'm going to put on in one way or another, and then what's the negative ramifications? What's the possible risk here? And then those two levels are constantly changing depending on time of year, depending on how your property lays out, depending on how much access you have, depending on how many other people are hunting. And all of that is like this sliding scale that you constantly have to be, adjusting the weight of each one of these variables and trying to understand. I'm not sure what the right metaphor here, if the metaphor is like a scale with weights, or if it's
with a multiplier. With the multiplier. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. So yeah, it's one of the most frustrating / fascinating aspects of deer hunting, seriously.
Yeah. There's more questions than answers a lot of times. Or maybe not. Maybe there would be more answers than questions, because I think I would say there's more answers than questions. That would be the more correct way to say it.
Right, because everyone's got their own take on every one of these questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of your questions, some of our episodes are a little bit more high level as well. You've got some that are pretty tactical, and then you've got some that kind of zoom out to the 30,000 foot overview, almost like more thematic. And this next one's one of those. This question, this episode, will be asking about what the biggest mistake is that people make that's keeping hunters from going from being good to being great. So what's creating this divide between a whole bunch of good and then just a handful of great hunters? What are the mistakes there? How did that come to be? How have you been framing that up for these guests?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you think?
Yeah. So the root of the question, everyone wants, I would feel if you listen to deer hunting podcasts, you want to get better. You wouldn't be listening to anything and trying to self-educate if you didn't want to get better. And so I think good to great is subjective, right? Maybe a great hunter means something to me than what it does to you. And that's part of the, having a subjective question like that, because it creates an open opportunity for the guest to, like, what is a good hunter? What is a great hunter? But I think most people that are serious hunters with all the tools and information that are available are good. And I think that there's some things like, what are these guys doing differently that makes them great? Because they are great. I mean, their track record is, they're doing a lot of the things that we all aspire to do. And a lot of them are later in their hunting careers where they've gone through the trials and tribulations to be good to great. So that was the basis of the question. And the answers were kind of all over the place, ironically. They were kind of all over the place. I thought a lot of the questions, I thought the most common answer would be, you got to stop shooting good bucks. That did come up. But the other theme I had noticed was effort. It's effort.
Yeah.
Having, whether that's multiple spots, knocking on more doors, having plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Because we've talked about this on like buying land. One of the mistakes I think people make is they buy a farm and they just hunt it to death. And I think that's like part of being from good to great. So it was a very fun question because everyone wants to find success, and it's, what are these guys doing that are making them great? So that was the root, and that was one of the themes that I picked up that I thought was pretty interesting.
I think that this one might be one of the more interesting episodes, even though it's one of the most open-ended questions, or maybe because it's one of the most open-ended questions. People are going to take in many different directions, and but all of them coming from such a strong background themselves. So I'm intrigued. What's your angle on this one, Jake? What do you think is the key?
Oh man, I think it's. I think a lot of it comes down to effort. I really do. I think there's in the world we live, you can go after and get whatever you want with the right amount of effort and looping in the right people to learn the right things. And I feel that I feel like it's as easy to fall into a rut. Like, hey, these are the 2 farms I hunt, and whatever's there is what I'm going to hunt. But I aspire to chase X caliber of deer, and maybe that area just doesn't produce it. And so you might be great for the area, but maybe that measurement of great is internally and more self-fulfilling, because I think that's probably what it is. I think a lot of these people, although they've made a career with whitetail hunting, they're truly passionate and ate up about getting better every year and learning. And it's not vanity. I think that that's something that a lot of people misunderstand with, like, people that have a reputation for killing big deer. I really think 99% of those people, they do not do it for vanity. They do it because they are addicted to learning, addicted to hunting big deer. And I think there's nothing wrong with that.
I can't argue with that. I keep on finding myself wanting to jump in with my takes on these, but then I catch myself because I'm supposed to wait and do one of these myself. So I keep on having to bite my tongue. It's very difficult for me to do that, Jake.
Yeah, you're gonna you got all the questions in advance, and we get to discuss the reason why you have a leg up. So
I do. This is true. But I don't think it's going to make my answers any better than these other guys. So that's for sure. Okay, next one, and this is one that, again, we've all been in this bucket or in this boat before. I can't find a buck to hunt. Now what? And I think this is a question that would work on August 1st or October 1st or November 1st. I've had it happen every single one of those dates. So tell me about the question.
Yeah, so I think as anticipation builds, so this is going to go live around mid-August. And that's where the deer are basically done growing, and buddies are sending you pictures of giant deer they have in velvet, and you're just feeling like a loser. If you're like, I can't find anything to hunt, I have my cameras out, I've done everything I could, and there's a level of panic. And I think it's probably self-imposed panic for everyone. And so I wanted to get an idea of, are you screwed? Or should you be optimistic? Should you be searching high and low to maybe find a deer that would get you excited to hunt? And so that was the basis of the question. And I've talked to people, like, hey, how's your season? I got nothing to hunt. And the point is, like, well, if you're that guy and you say it like Eeyore, should you be Eeyore or should you be super excited? So that was the basis of the question.
Did you get the answers you expected on that one?
A little bit of a mix. This one was a little bit of a mix. I think, people talk about the shift from summer to fall ranges, and that was
Mm-hmm.
something that we did cover a lot. And there was some specific details too of in some of these areas of how far maybe that shift is. Because you hear shift, does that mean 5 miles or does that mean 1 mile? Or
Yeah.
what habitat type to what summer habitat to fall habitat? And that episode I'm really excited about because I think there were some things that I got reassurance from. I mean, I'm running cameras right now. There's a farm where I don't have a mature buck on camera right now. And then I'm a little nervous, but hey, I don't have to be unless you listen to the episode and come up with some other reasons. But I think no matter when it is, I think there's, to your point, if you could listen to that a variety of different times and get some tangible strategy to try to find something to hunt. And the other thing too, one of the common themes was finding one is usually the hardest part. So you got to work really hard.
Yeah. What's the way that you deal with this? How do you think about this when you find yourself in that camp?
I don't panic. I think, and I used to, because I've had the ability to run a lot of cameras on a lot of different farms. And so I just had noticed that some farms would have a lot of summer velvet bucks, and I was super excited. And then after a few hard frost, the habitat type changes, they all disappear, and it's like, oh, that wasn't really great. And then there's other farms where I'm most excited about what shows up in October because usually they stick around, and those are the deer that you're going to have an opportunity to hunt. And so I do not panic, and usually I have to tell friends or people that reach out like, oh, I don't have anything on camera. Just wait, it's going to get better. Especially if the habitat is a good fall habitat, and or there's crop rotations, and that's a huge thing in farm country where a ditch out in the middle of nowhere that has standing crops all the way around it, and there's food, maybe a creek runs through. Like there's a lot of resources for a deer to hang out there. You take out a lot of the sight barrier of crops. That whole ditch is going to hunt a lot different. Now a buck may push a buck may push a doe out there, and that could still be a great spot, but everything changes, and so you gotta be aware of that and be optimistic, but don't be lackadaisical. Would be my take on it.
Well, yeah, and that brings me to like the next situation though is like, are there situations when you should be worried or when you should be like, oh, there's not a buck here I'm interested in hunting, and now I do need to like go to plan B, plan C, plan D, and find one. Did some of the guests kind of go that direction with it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We got Thomas Milson answered that question in a really fun way, to where a point like, hey, if that is you, yeah, you should panic. So, and it's very specific. And so I'm going to have to leave a cliffhanger on that. I feel like a guy that's trying to sell a book, but not talk about the book. And like, you have to buy the book to hear it. So I apologize for that. And I don't know where the line is. So.
Well, we're always walking the line here on this show. All right. Well, I hope that I'm not in that boat this year. I was in that boat last year, a lot of it, and never did find a deer that I was too terribly into. Well, I guess that's not true. I found there was one deer I was after, and you know about it because I killed it right after I told you I was gonna.
Yep.
But then in my other main area, that was a doozy. But anyways,
did you find anything that throughout the fall that showed up?
No, not that I really wanted to hunt.
You had to listen to that episode.
Yeah, there'd been two bucks that I was hoping to hunt that year in this other area, and one of them disappeared really early. One of them disappeared early October, and then one of those deer got killed by someone else. I found out later, and then one of those deer showed up randomly for like 3-4 days in November, and then disappeared again. And it was only at night, and he went from being a homebody for 3 years to being a ghost at 5. And I don't have any idea if he's around anymore. Probably not. So
we had to listen to that episode. You'll feel energized and discouraged at the same time.
Yes, I plan on it. All right, next episode, next question, and this is another one we kind of alluded to earlier. This is you said this gets you excited. It gets me very excited too. This is one of my absolute favorite things. I just got access to a new farm. What should I do now? That's the best. Walking a new farm, the excitement, the optimism, so great.
Yeah. The root of that question is a lot of times people, maybe as season approaches, they get a little bit more aggressive. Maybe they decide to buy a farm. Maybe they decide to, a lease pops up and they scoop it up. maybe they get permission. And the reason I asked this question too, it's around August 25th. And so you can't do all these big, awesome projects that everyone talks about. Go do a 10-acre TSI cut, or doze in a new road, or carve out this new giant food plot. So the question is rooted in the idea of you kind of have to play the cards that you're dealt right now. And so that was an interesting caveat to the question, to where once again there was kind of a variance of answers. There was, I would say, a general consensus amongst all of them, but it's a super exciting time, but you have to be thoughtful and methodical. And these guys are all thoughtful and methodical. So that's why I felt like it was a perfect question for them.
Now, I could see there being two angles on this. There could be some guys who, and it all depends on the time of year, but in this time, with at least the episode dropping, at the end of the summer, maybe some folks would be like, okay, I just got access to the farm. It's too late to do anything. It's just, how do I hunt it as it is right now?
Mhm.
And then I could see maybe some people would still be like, hey, there's still time to do something. And maybe they would aggressively try to make one last minute change of some kind or something. Did you get people with both of those two different ideas? Or was everyone like, hands off, it's too late? Or what was any consensus on that front?
It was more conservative than what I had initially anticipated. And that was the fun because I had some, like I said, I had some guesses how some of like a lot of these people I've interviewed multiple times, so I kind of think I know how they think, but but I don't clearly. And the general consensus was being pretty conservative, and very thoughtful with what do you do now, and that episode should be pretty interesting for folks because inherently, even some of their answers, I feel if you were the guy that fell behind throughout the summer, that it's that a lot of the philosophy is very applicable to that individual as well.
Yeah. Okay. Jake, you just got access to a new farm at the end of August or early September. And we'll say you're in Illinois, so your season opens in 1 month's time. What do you do?
My ideal situation is I'm going to have a full free day, dark to dark, ideally. No interruptions throughout the day. And I'm going to have as many cameras as I think I'm going to need. I'm going to bring as many pre-hang sets as I think I'm going to need. And I just go through about my day and try to use whatever whitetail knowledge is in my brain to read and anticipate what is going to go on. Um, in a perfect world, if there was an area where I could still get in some food, I would probably like to do that. But I don't necessarily think I would unless I felt very, very confident of this is where it needs to go and this is the reason behind it. Because that's a pretty big decision to bring in equipment and do that. But I'm just going to go in and hang a lot of cameras and hang a lot of stands if it makes sense. If there's only like two good spots that make sense where I can blow my scent and have good access, then I'm only going to hang two sets. But then I'm going to hang multiple cameras to get intel. That's my plan.
And you said earlier when we were talking about cameras that you would err. I think you said this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said that you would be more of the kind of person who would walk like every square inch to figure it out versus stay on the outskirts. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say for sure because there's not a lot of big farms here, so it doesn't take very long to cover 40 acres or 50 acres. I mean, if I fell into a dream scenario where it's 1,000 acres, no way, or even 200, I think I probably wouldn't. But a 40, a 20, a 50, probably an 80, I'm probably going to cover not 1,000% of it, but as many of the arteries of the farm that I can.
Okay. Here's the next one. And this one gives me heartburn just saying it. I imagine there will be people that will get heartburn just by clicking play on that podcast, because if they are clicking play on that podcast, they're doing it because they're either experiencing this right now or have in the past, or are anticipating this possibly happening to them in the short term, which is my food plots look like crap. Now what? So you've got
Oh,
a
yeah.
failed food plot. We've all been there. Very distressing, especially if it's getting late into the year. If it's like a fall food plot you just planted in August or something, and now it's September and it's looking bad. I feel like I'm there too often. I never
Yep.
like it. What? Tell me about the question. Give me some thoughts.
Everyone always has very high expectations for food plots, and they see it on Instagram or a magazine where it's just looks perfect. And everyone's, no matter how good the food plot looks, they always wish it could look a little bit better, more than likely. And a lot of people put a lot of stock into food plots too. So that was part of the root of the question of, if your food plot looks like crap, is your season bust, or is it, is this something truly to stress about? And some of those guests dove into that naturally. And it's been really dry the last handful of falls, so most fall food plots have not done well, based off of your planting method and everything else too. So what are some commonalities of why your food plot is failing as well? Like, if it fails every single year, what are you doing? Are you not addressing the soil? Maybe you need to consider a perennial instead of a fall food plot. So those are all things that most people plant food plots. Most people wish they looked better. Everyone wishes they didn't fail, and everyone's been in that boat. So that was the root of the question.
Yeah. I feel like I have followed the Jeff Sturgis method of dealing with food plot failure a lot, and have also reached out to him many summers or early falls like, Jeff, what about now? What about this situation? What do I do given this? So I'm sure he'll have something great to say on this one too.
Yeah, there was a lot of really good answers for this. And a lot of the answers were very, very common on the strategy, the seed type, maybe the rates, and some of them dive into maybe, why did it fail? Was it because of weather, or was it because of a different reason?
Because you were a horrible farmer.
yeah, right. Maybe that is the case.
It's probably the case for most of us, being amateur ad hoc farmers for a few weeks a year.
Yep.
All right. Well, what about you? If you've got a failed food plot, how do you tackle it, or what would you suggest to someone who's in that situation?
I've had. I'll say this: I've been able to run a drill from a county NRCS office, and so that has really helped keep moisture in the soil. And before I did that, and I'd work the dirt, and like the classic steps that we all kind of grew up on, I would have more failures with that. And since using a drill, I've had a lot better luck of retaining soil moisture and keeping something in the plots year round, and not letting weeds take over. So that's been something that thankfully I haven't had a major failure the last couple of years. Prior to that, same thing. Jeff Sturgis cereal box of all these different oats, rye, all these different things that is going to green up and grow really fast. And so that's been I hope I don't have to do that this year, but I could. It's weather dependent, and I have paid way more attention to getting actual soil samples. Like before, 3 or 4 years ago, I never got a soil sample. That's like, if this is dirt, it should grow whatever I want. And so I've been educated more on that. And so it's a moving spectrum. And I think that question will be helpful for everyone. Even if you're just starting out, or if you've done food plots for 20 years, I feel like there's some things in there that will be helpful for everyone. Which I'm really happy with how that episode's turning out.
Great. Speaking of heartburn, next question. My whole area got hammered by EHD. Now what?
Ugh.
Yeah.
That was a hard question to ask some of these people, because they had experienced that. When I asked Bill yesterday, I was like, I promise I did not formulate this question to cause pain for you. But the reason being is, unfortunately, there's parts of the country that are seeing more EHD cases than, Southern Iowa, Northern Missouri has, been kind of the epicenter of a lot of EHD outbreaks over recent years. But there's been cases in Ohio, other states, Indiana. And so the question is, unfortunately, you may have to face this in a 5-year period, a 10-year period. And I wanted to talk to people that have experienced it, or have consulted on farms, or been on farms that got decimated. And what do you do? And what's the recourse? Is there a silver lining to this? I feel like there's a lot of different perceptions of EHD, and these people are super serious about whitetails, and they want the whitetail herd to do well. And so I feel like a lot of them are self-educated. Do they have a doctorate in EHD? No, but it probably pretty close. And so I wanted to dive into all this, because unfortunately we all may have to face it in some capacity.
Did you run them through the key filter? They shouldn't be allowed to answer that question until they can tell you what the acronym EHD stands for.
Ooh, yeah. I could say it, but I would mispronounce it.
Epizotic hemorrhagic disease.
That sounds right. They might have missed a letter, or maybe you nailed it. I don't know.
I might have missed a letter too, but I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. What do you do? What would you say to someone who's in that situation? Have you been in this situation yourself?
Thankfully, this past year there was some EHD cases near where I was at. There was fortunately not wiped out by any means. So that was a bonus. I have never had to face a true catastrophic EHD wipeout because I hunt a lot of different areas, and it seems like it doesn't wipe out a whole county; it wipes out different pockets, and so it's a little demoralizing when you're excited about a deer and you maybe watched throughout the summer, you knew him from the year before, and then there's this massive dry spell, or you start hearing about, oh, so and so found 15 deer dead in blah blah river, and it starts to linger in the back of your mind of, well, is he just not on camera? Is he dead? And it's not fun. But everyone has faced the thought process of, did that deer die of EHD in the last 2 weeks, the last month? And I framed that question in a way it was not necessarily confirmed too, because I feel like EHD is always a rumor. It's always in the rumor mill.
Yeah.
It's always a rumor mill. It's never, I found 15. It's so-and-so heard from so-and-so that so-and-so found, 50 deer. So I framed it as it's rumors. It's I've heard hearsay, and but thank gosh I have not had to experience that. But some of those questions, some of the answers were probably what you could expect: pack up and go somewhere else because you can't magically make them appear if they're dead.
Yeah, which is true. If you get hit really bad, but I feel like there's a silver lining sometimes. But I'll save my answer on that. Again, I need to shut up and stop talking. Okay. EHD. Let's move on from that one. Here's another one of those like higher level thematic kind of ones. What can hunters do now to make sure that the next 25 years of deer hunting are better than the last 25? And when I read this question, I kind of was not confused, but I was curious from like what angle people would approach this. Would they be looking at this like, how do I make my next 25 years better, like individually versus the last 25 years? Or how do I make sure that like deer hunting in general for everyone is better for the next 25 years? Did you have a specific one of those that you were thinking when you wrote this, or were you kind of knowing that it could go either way and you wanted that to be the case?
I was trying to leave it open-ended because I wanted to see, and this is how I ask the question almost every time. You or me or anyone listening to this wants to make the next 25 years of deer hunting better than their last. And a lot of the answers were individual based, because I framed it as, you as an individual, you're only one guy, and can one guy create enough impact to make it better for everyone? And maybe that was some of the answers, but I purposely left it to where you could look at it holistically or individually, because whitetail hunting is extremely a selfish endeavor for a lot of these guys. I would say, I feel like they would probably describe themselves in some way as a loner or someone that enjoys hunting by themselves, or they don't have a camp and they bring in 10 of their high school buddies and 10 of their friends and they just go about it. Like, all these guys are very methodical and work really hard for their own goals and satisfaction. So there were some really interesting answers on a holistic approach and how one person can make an impact for many people. And then there was some that, if you want to have the next 25 years be better than the last, you are going to have to make some specific things happen.
Interesting. Well, Jake, what about you? How do you think a hunter now can make the next 25 years better?
I think I think you're going to have to work really hard. I think you're going to have to lock up some form of private property so you can make positive impacts on the landscape, and also hopefully inspire others to do the same. I truly feel that some of the best habitat managers and people that are ate up with whitetails take such good care of the ground and inspire others to do the same. You look at this craze of managing timber properly. No one used to be excited about that. And so you look at that, you can't do that on public ground. You can't create, they do it on a large scale, but like as an individual, you can't do that. I can't go take a
Yeah.
chainsaw and go do TSI on a piece of public. So I think
You
that's
could. You just
yeah,
might get into
yeah,
serious trouble.
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of my thought process, and I do think um, we always look back. Part of the reason I asked that question too is people romanticize over nostalgia, and so everyone says the past. Oh, it was just the good old days.
The good old
We're going to
days.
say that in 25 years, right? And so that was another layer of the question of I knew everyone would romanticize. No one said, well, I don't know, the last 25 years has actually been pretty dang good, and I don't think we have to do anything better. So that was another like kind of thought process behind the question. But yeah, I don't have a great answer because I think it's loaded. I mean, that is a loaded question, and I got more enjoyment asking it than I did answering it. I'll tell you that.
So final question is, are you doing the bonus episode final question or no? Was that the last episode or is there a ninth episode?
That we got to
Bonus.
figure that out yet. So I would say there's 8 for sure, and we're gonna figure out what we're gonna do with the alternate question.
Do you want to answer the alternate or do you want to hold off on that as a secret?
We could tease real quick. We can go over it real quick.
Okay. And maybe people will pipe in and tell whether or not they want you to do this.
Release that one.
Although it might be too late at that point.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting one because I think this question gets to maybe how each one of these hunters defines success or how we define success. I think that's what this question gets at. Maybe. At least that's the way I look at it. But the question is this: do great hunters really shoot a buck every year?
The root of that question is everyone goes into season with really high expectations and goals, and everyone wants to fill their buck tag, right? That's why you do all the work year round. And some of these hunters, like the follow up question I ask a lot of times: out of the last 10 years, how many years did you not shoot a buck? And there was actually a common percentage to where it was like, okay, these are some of the best hunters for this percent of years. Either their target buck they were hunting died, from EHD, neighbor shot them, disappeared, or they couldn't find a deer that made them happy, or, the list kind of goes on. But there was a certain percentage that seemed to follow amongst those hunters. But none of them, now there was another really good answer within that of the answer was bluntly yes. And the reason being is just because you can't find a high scoring deer, maybe there's a mature buck that you could, help ensure got shot, which I thought was a really interesting perspective. But none of them said like, yeah, every great hunter shoots a buck no matter what. And they just lower their goals until they magically, come across a deer so they can say they shot a buck for the last 50 years out of 50 years. That was not the answer.
Yeah. What's your answer?
I wouldn't say every single year, but I would say when they said the percentage, that was kind of the thought process of it was about 80%, 90%. One was 70%. So, 10 out of 10 years, you only eat a tag 3 times. And I would say that's probably accurate. I really do. But it's, because the reason I think it's that high too for a lot of those people is because they put so much work and they have option A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And, I think that's something that I'm consciously trying to do every single year to have a lot of different options because crazy things happen. You could lose permission. Something crazy happens. And so when you have all your season riding into one plan, that's scary. I've been
That's
there.
a recipe
scary.
for disaster.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the truth. I know how that feels sometimes. Well, what is there anything else that you want folks to know about this series coming up that they should be thinking about, that they should be looking forward to, that they should be anxious about? What should they? What's the last thing that folks should be leaving here today with, knowing about what's to come?
They're going to have a weekly 8-person panel of coaches to lead them along in the excitement of season. So each of these are thematically following the excitement of the season, different opportunities of, windows of opportunity prior to season. And whether you've been hunting for a super long time or you're new, this is going to be your weekly check-in to get expert advice on one topic and dive not super deep into it, but get the quick and dirty with some nuance for every single topic. So I'm really excited about it. And I with just some of the conversation, and they're like, "Man, that's a really good idea. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how this turns out." So I'd love to hear people's feedback because I think most podcasts, just like this one, it's just you and I talking, and so I think there's just a lot of information and perspectives in a short amount of time to get refined and relate to one of the 8 people, 4 of the 8 people, or you think all 8 of them are crazy. I mean, that's going to be up to you.
Well, I think one way or another, it's going to be fascinating. I'm very excited about it. I'm glad it's come together, and I appreciate you putting in the time and effort to bring this to fruition. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, I'm excited to tune in. You and I are going to be doing some stuff together next week, which I'm excited about, and recording my version of this or my part of this series. So looking forward to seeing you soon and making all that happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on here.
All right, and that's going to do it today. I appreciate you joining us. Please tune in next week for the first episode of the Back 40 podcast, and every week for the next 8 weeks. I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy this one. We get some really interesting insights as you heard here with Jake, kind of previewing things. I can't wait to tune into the full shows myself. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for future episodes of Wired Hunt, of course, of the Foundations podcast. The Foundations podcast with Tony. We've got a new season of Rut Fresh Radio coming up here soon too, as we mentioned, and it's going to be a great fall. So until then, stick around for the next week's podcast. Thanks for being a part of this, and stay wired to hunt.